everybody. Welcome to Northwestern's engineering panel. Thank you so much for spending your Thursday evening with us today. My name is Simone, and I will be moderating this Q&A tonight. I have a lovely host of panelists with me today. Before we get into it, we're going to just introduce ourselves so you guys can start thinking about the questions you have for us. Please make sure you leave them in the chat below so we can answer as many as we can in the time we have with you today. So I'll begin. My name is Simone. I just graduated this June from Northwestern, where I studied anthropology, environmental policy, and got the sustainability certificate in McCormick. And I love Northwestern so much, I'm sticking around for another year to complete the master's in sustainability in McCormick. I am a graduate counselor at the Northwestern Office of Undergraduate Admissions, and on campus, I participated in neurobiology research. Olivia, take it away.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Olivia. I am a rising fourth year from Washington, D.C. I'm studying biomedical engineering and psychology, as well as being on the pre-med track. And when I'm not a tour guide on campus, I am also a peer advisor or a PA, helping our new students through the one-week orientation called Wildcat Welcome. I'll hand it over to John.
Thanks, Olivia. Hi, guys. I'm John. I'm a rising fourth year from Lake Forest, Illinois, studying chemical engineering with minors in economics and computer science. And when I am not giving tours on campus or doing any of these fun info sessions, I am the assistant director of TEDx Northwestern, which is one of the largest completely student-run TED organizations in the world. Trisha, why don't you go next?
Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. My name is Trisha. I am an incoming fourth year student studying civil engineering at Northwestern and a little bit of architecture. I am from Hinsdale, Illinois, but I already said that, western suburb of Chicago. And then when I'm not in the classroom, I am singing a cappella with the Northwestern Undertones. And with that, I'll pass it over to Megs.
Hi, everyone. My name is Megs. I am a rising fourth year from Naples, Florida. I'm doing the BS-MS program, so I'm getting my BS in computer engineering and my MS in computer science. And I'm also doing the Kellogg Managerial Analytics certificate. And when I'm not in class or giving tours, I'm a mentor for first-year engineers. And let's hand it off to Sanath.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Sanath. I'm a rising third year studying computer science with a minor in psychology and a certificate through the Kellogg program for undergraduates in managerial analytics. And I am from Oakland, California. Simone, back to you. Oh, and one last thing. When I'm not giving tours on campus, I am the electrical lead for NASA Student Launch, which competes annually in a competition hosted by NASA where we build a model rocket and shoot into the atmosphere. Now, Simone, back to you.
Thank you. That is so cool. So something that I know most people ask when they learn about Northwestern's engineering program is, what is whole brain engineering? It's a term that gets thrown around a lot. John, can you tell us a little bit about what that really means?
Yeah, sure, Simone. So whole brain engineering, I think, in my opinion, kind of means that we tie in all the best parts of a traditional engineering education with that little extra bit of arts and sciences that you would get at a school like Northwestern or the Weinberg College of Arts and Sciences. So whether that's taking a public speaking course, completing your theme, which I did in the history of economics, so I took some economics classes, some history classes, kind of exposes you to the rest of academia and other learning subjects and kind of helps round you out a little bit. So it's not just all numbers and engineering the whole way through.
Thank you so much, John. And for anyone who's interested in becoming an engineer specifically at Northwestern, there are some introductory courses that all engineering students do take at Northwestern. Olivia, could you tell us a little bit about those intro sequences for first-year students?
Yes, definitely. So our sequence for first-year engineers is called the Engineering First sequence. It's a year-long sequence that like the name says, all first-year engineers have to take. To me, I really loved this sequence because it allows all of your peers to go through the same curriculum and really build those fundamentals. It assumes that you know nothing, and for something like computer science, where coming out of high school, I really did know nothing. It was a really awesome way to dive into the subject and also interact with my fellow engineers right away. And I think it really helps to build the collaborative environment that to me is really special about McCormick. And for example, like I was saying, I really didn't have much computer science background coming into Northwestern. And the first quarter we go through kind of basics of coding. And it really helped me to interact with my peers who had more experience and really kind of get help from them and establish that collaborative space that is really characteristic of McCormick.
That is so cool to hear about. So I know that Sanath, when he was giving his introduction, talked a little bit about the cool things he gets to do outside of the classroom. So Sanath, could you tell us a little bit about if in any clubs you got to find yourself learning about engineering outside of just your curriculum within the classroom?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned NASA Student Launch a little bit earlier. That's part of a bigger umbrella of kind of like aerospace student organizations that's called NU STARS, which is the Northwestern University Society for Space Technology and Rocket Society. Always struggle to remember that one. And I remember as a freshman, I went the first day and I met the presidents of NU STARS, Katie and Rob, and they were like so helpful. They did like an intro session to like McCormick for like all the freshmen. They told us about like the best classes to take, and they helped us like learn in the shop, like how to solder things on. Like these are like the coding things that will be useful for you in the future. I really believe like that like first year with the NU STARS like really helped me succeed in my first year at Northwestern, and it's something that like we try and do for our incoming first years every year.
Awesome, thank you so much. Now, speaking about outside of the classroom opportunities, Tricia, are there a lot of opportunities for engineering students to get internships or have real world experience?
Yeah, for sure. That's a super good question. So one thing I want to talk about before diving into internships about real world experience is that part of that engineering first curriculum that Olivia touched on earlier is a class called Design Thinking and Communication. Every first year engineer and also incoming transfer student engineers take this course. It's incredible. You take it for 2 quarters and you're essentially assigned a real world project for a real world client. So coming into college, as Olivia said, this is a program that assumes that you have no experience. So as an 18-year-old engineer, in parentheses, because we're studying it, you're given like a real thing to be doing. So that's just one thing I want to touch on right off the bat, because that's a really, really awesome thing that Northwestern does, where you get real world experience while you're in the classroom. As far as internships and career stuff goes, there are way too many resources that I could even like begin to touch upon. But there's a really great office for engineering specifically, Engineering Career Development, ECD. They are wonderful. As far as programming that they have, I've been to mock interview days where you can talk to people in your specific industry, and they'll give you like a fake interview and then give you feedback on it. And this is awesome. Again, they're super specific to your industry, so they give you really wonderful feedback that's super applicable. Workshops on how to dress business casual, business professional. I've been to resume open houses and cover letter open houses. So they have really, really great resources. As far as me specifically, I study civil and environmental engineering. They had a career fair just for us. There were 16 companies for only like 60 students. So they really do make that effort to help students get connected with all that stuff. So as far as internships, I've had the same one for the past 2 summers because I loved it so much. So yeah, I got connected through all of that through that office, and plenty of opportunities for sure.
Thank you so much, Tricia. Before we talk a little bit more about these out of classroom experiences, I know a question a lot of people have who are watching this right now is about our BSMS program, and you guys are very lucky to have an expert on this panel. Megs, could you tell us a little bit about that program, what you're doing?
Hi, yes, definitely. So the BSMS program is really great. I actually just submitted my application this past spring to the program. So basically how it works is it's a 5-year program where you can finish your BS or Bachelor's of Science. In case people don't know, it's Bachelor's of Science and Master's of Science. So you can actually get both of those degrees in 5 years or less. So I'm very much type A, so I'm a planner. So I'm actually able to get it done in 4 years. That's very possible. So in 4 years, I'll be graduating with my BS and my MS. So basically how it works is you'll apply when you have 1 quarter left of your undergrad. And then if you actually have a GPA of a 3.5 or higher, that's automatic admission. So that's another incentive to really do well in your classes, keep your grades high. And then once you're in the curriculum, there are 3 different options for the master's that you can do. You can either have it be through coursework, you can have it be a thesis-based one or have it be research-based. So I'm doing the coursework-based one. So I'll be taking 12 classes in addition to my bachelor's, and then be getting that master's after another year.
Thank you so much. I know if you guys have any other questions about that program, make sure to put them in the chat, because you have a really great resource in Megs right here on this panel. But circling back to our out of classroom experiences for engineering students, John, could you talk a little bit about study abroad opportunities, and can you study abroad if you are an engineer?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. I'll just say, first of all, the study abroad advising at Northwestern is phenomenal. If you want to do it, they will help you plan a way to make it happen. Something that I definitely really wanted to do. And I actually studied abroad last summer in London at the London School of Economics. I took a couple of econ classes to help round out my minor, which was a phenomenal experience. I really highly recommend it. They have a phenomenal program over there. Northwestern actually has, I think, 2 different kinds of study abroad, or 3 different kinds of study abroad. There's Northwestern study abroad, it's where you study abroad internationally with a Northwestern professor. There's affiliated study abroad, so that's like a school Northwestern is familiar with. We know the program, we know the faculty, and that credit counts. And then there's unaffiliated study abroad, which is another program that you fund on your own, and you basically petition and say, hey, Northwestern, I want to go do this. Will you help me out? And the advising for all 3 is phenomenal. As an engineer, it can be sometimes a little harder to plan a study abroad, especially since there are so many sequence classes that Olivia kind of alluded to a little while ago. Classes that you'll take one class in the fall, one in the winter, and then one in the spring. That being said, the advising is definitely super helpful. There's study abroad global ambassadors, who are students who previously did study abroad programs, who will help you choose which programs are right for you. And if that's an engineering study abroad program or something that's outside engineering, definitely super doable. It's also often cheaper to study abroad, and financial aid will cover study abroad for the most part at Northwestern, which is definitely a super nice thing to have here. If it's something you're interested in, definitely do it. Don't let engineering scare you out of it. A great way to kind of explore the world a little bit and maybe learn some new things.
Well, that's great to hear. Yeah, everyone has an opportunity to study abroad if they really do want to. Continuing out of classroom experiences, Olivia, have you had any experience with research on campus, and how can engineering students get involved in research?
Yeah, so research is a huge part of Northwestern. Each year, the university allocates $3.5 million to research, and that's solely for undergraduate research. It's honestly as easy as going up to your professor after class, asking them what they're doing for their lab or their research, and most of the time they're very willing to talk to you about it. I've gotten research opportunities just from doing that and having one-on-one conversations with my professor that ultimately leads to them, asking if I want to work in their lab over the summer. Right now, I'm actually doing remote research for a physiology lab down in Feinberg, which is our medical school. It's in our Chicago campus, but I'm doing machine learning for them and looking at MRI imaging from patients who have been in car accidents to then predict if they will have chronic pain in 6 months or 12 months. And this is something that I just got solely from honestly emailing the people in the lab and asking them if there's an opportunity open. And I was extremely lucky, especially during this time of uncertainty and obviously, kind of inconvenience in terms of coronavirus, to be able to get a remote research opportunity. But I've also heard of friends who, despite these situations, have also emailed professors and gotten opportunities to do research in their labs. So it's super accessible to students, and honestly, a really awesome way, like you were saying, to have that out of classroom experience.
That's a really, really cool opportunity, and goes to show the connections that Northwestern students can have with Chicagoland and Evanston area resources. Going back into the classroom a little bit more, Megs, could you talk a little bit about the distribution requirements or core requirements that engineering students have to complete?
Yeah, definitely. So there are some classes that all engineers will have to complete, like Simone just said. So all engineers will be taking 4 basic science courses, and depending on what your major is, those requirements may be a little different. Like, for example, within computer engineering, 2 of my basic science classes were physics, but I know that for computer science, you don't have that mandate. You also will be taking 4 credits of math. Again, within the depending on the major that you're in, they may vary a little bit, but 3 out of the 4 classes, I believe, are the same across all engineering fields. You also will have some basic engineering. This really lets you explore McCormick and take some classes that are out of your major. Like, for example, I took a lot of industrial engineering classes as my basic engineering classes. I was able to work with my career advisor to have my Kellogg certificate prerequisite classes count for my basic engineering. So there's a lot of work that you can do within your basic engineering, within your required science and math classes to make sure that you are able to satisfy all of the different academic paths that you want to do and then still satisfy those McCormick basic requirements.
Thank you so much, Megs. I want to ask Sanath now, do you feel like McCormick is a competitive environment or a more collaborative environment? What has your experience been?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's been like overwhelmingly collaborative. I mean, like when I go to office hours, are a great resource really to help study for classes where the professor just opens up their door and you can come ask for classes or ask questions on your homework or for a test or whatever it may be. Half the time, my question is not even answered by the professor. It's by another student that's in there looking for asking a different question, and bouncing off ideas with other students is often like more helpful for me because they're stuck in a similar position where I was yesterday, and I can help them out with something that they're stuck with that I got just like a few minutes ago. And then when you can just go to the library and just like discuss like study habits and just like different ways of approaching like the homework, test, whatever it may be. I've never seen anyone be like competitive in a classroom or over grades or anything like that. I think you can ask a total stranger in one of your classes, like, do you have any tips for this homework problem or whatever it may be? And everyone's more than willing to help out.
That is so great to hear. And I can honestly say it's also been my experience. Now, a question on a lot of people's minds is the quarter system. So John, could you talk about how the quarter system impacts engineering and how you guys feel about that as an engineer?
Yeah, so quarter system is definitely super flexible and a very different system than a lot of other schools. I know some of you may already know this, but I'm going to give you a quick overview of what that actually means. So Northwestern, the year is divided into 4 quarters, 3 of which are like primary academic ones: fall, winter, spring, and summer. Fall runs from like mid-September until the end of the year. Winter runs from the start of the year, so like early January until like March. And then spring runs from early April out and through the middle of June, and summer is the rest, basically. You are on campus for those first 3 quarters. Summer's when you have time to do whatever you want. You can go home and watch Netflix. You can do research on campus. You can study abroad, get an internship, you name it. The cool thing about the quarter system is it ends up being 4 classes a quarter, 12 classes a year, 48 classes total, versus at a traditional semester school, you're taking 5 classes a semester, 10 classes a year, 40 classes total. So that's 8 more courses than you would normally take at a semester school. And at Northwestern, 8 courses is around the cost of an average minor. So definitely allows you to kind of get some more interdisciplinary study done while you're at Northwestern. A common concern with the quarter system is that the quarters are a little shorter in length, like 10 to 11 weeks versus a 15-week semester. And people are worried that like we're smishing classes in and making them really fast-paced and difficult. I'd say that's probably not the case at all. That's where we kind of choose what content to teach and then choose what content not to teach. And for those classes that require more time or 2 full semesters of study at another school, that's where these sequence courses become super important. So I took organic chemistry as a part of being a chemical engineering student, and that resulted in 2 quarters subsequently of organic chemistry. And I could have taken a third if I was doing maybe the pre-med track or something like that. So these classes are all sequenced together. So if you need that additional information, it's there for you, but also it allows you to specialize a little bit more. So I only needed 2 of the 3 quarters rather than taking 2 full semesters of organic chemistry at a semester school, which freed me up to then take another economics class or another computer science class to help kind of expand my horizons a little bit there. Yeah, that's kind of a general overview.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. That was very helpful. Now, for Olivia, I know we spoke a little bit about some of these entry-level sequences, but could you talk a little bit more specifically about DTC1 and DTC2? And additionally, if an engineering student has to complete a project for those classes, are they given a budget? Are they given those materials? Or do they have to pay for those materials themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. And DTC honestly is one of my favorite things to talk about. It's definitely been my favorite class that I've taken at Northwestern. Tricia talked about it a little bit, but to recap, you're put in a small group of students. So it's about 4 students per group. And you are given a problem that a client needs you to solve. So a little bit about my project for DTC. My client had hemiplegia, meaning that half of her body was paralyzed. And she lives in Chicago, and obviously it gets really cold here during the winter. And she wanted us to help her design a device that would allow her to put on gloves more easily, since due to the cold, her paralysis would get a lot worse. And so her hands would kind of stiffen and not be able to loosen up to be able to don gloves. So we met with her down at Shirley Ryan Ability Lab, which is where she was doing physical therapy. We met with her and her physical therapist to kind of discuss the measures that she wanted in her device, what was accommodating to her, and really make it very centered around her needs. And then we came back to campus. We brainstormed a ton and honestly came up with so many different kind of prototypes. We went down to the shop, and part of your training in DTC is getting shop trained. So being able to use the machines and really build those prototypes. At the end of the 10 weeks, we ended up designing a final prototype and got it to present it to her in kind of this presentation that all the DTC groups do together. So it's also really cool, even if you're not taking DTC, to walk through and see everyone's projects. But we were able to present it to her, and she actually still uses it to this day. And like Tricia was saying, coming into Northwestern, you being able to have that real world experience literally in your first 2 quarters is really amazing. And for me, coming out of high school, I didn't really know what engineering was. I didn't really have an engineering kind of curriculum in my high school. So seeing those real world applications and being someone also who's very like goal oriented and human centered, it was really what made me fall in love with engineering and stick with it. And in terms of your question for budget, all of that is allocated to you through the program. So all of those supplies are available, and they always are at the shop. Like the shop is always open for students, regardless of whether they're in McCormick or not. All you need to do is be shop trained by one of the specialists there. So again, super accessible and a really awesome curriculum.
Thank you so much, Olivia. That sounds like a really, really incredible opportunity, especially, like you said, as a first-year student. So switching gears a little bit, Sanath, I know that you have had the opportunity to study things outside of McCormick. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you can combine engineering and maybe something in a liberal arts curriculum like our Weinberg College of Arts and Sciences.
Yeah, absolutely. So every engineer has to complete what's called a theme. So these are classes that you're required to take that are actually outside of McCormick. And this is to help give you a greater breadth in the liberal arts and sciences area. And I know many of my friends have capitalized on this theme requirement to take classes in Weinberg and combine their studies in McCormick with something there. So I have a friend doing chemical engineering in McCormick, but then also econ in Weinberg. And I personally am doing a major in computer science within McCormick, and then psychology as a minor in Weinberg. So I think it's like a really great counterbalance. Computer science is like everything like about how like a computer works, and psychology is like kind of how like a human works, right? I thought that like kind of duality was super interesting, and there's just many ways to go about doing that with your theme requirement. On top of that, if you come in with various people come in with different amounts of credit, and you can just have free electives, and these are just like classes that you have that are free and don't necessarily you don't necessarily need to graduate, but you can use however you want and take class within Weinberg, within Medill. I think all 6 undergraduate schools offer classes for non-majors. So you can go ahead and use those electives and study anything you want, anything that piques your interest. Opening up the Northwestern course catalog is kind of like being a kid in a candy store. There's tons of great classes and all kinds of different things to try. And it's certainly possible within McCormick.
That is so great to hear. Along a similar line, I know some people are wondering about being able to explore other interests that are unrelated to engineering as an engineering student. Tricia, could you talk a little bit about that?
I would love to, yeah. So I, unlike Sanath and John, I wanted to use my theme to kind of like dip into a bunch of different things. So like those 7-8 classes can totally constitute a minor, but I was like, that can be 7-8 classes that I can take all over the grid. So that's what I did with mine. I've taken education and inequality. I've taken reading and writing poetry, reading and writing fiction. I took introduction to music class. I took intro to drawing. So I have really used those 7-8 classes to totally dip my toes into everything. And not once did I feel weird about it, or did anyone else make me feel weird about it. You'll find that in all of those classes, because they sound so cool and because they're so popular, you'll find people from all over the grid. So you won't be the only engineer in there. If it's an intro to drawing class, I guarantee it. And there will be people from all over the Northwestern campus that are taking those classes as well. So definitely don't feel pressured like you have to use those 7-8 classes to do something else. I certainly didn't, and I have had the experience of taking so many different classes in so many different schools. So it's definitely promoted. Additionally, as far as like, if you do want to like use those classes to take a minor, I've pursued arts and things extracurricularly. So I'm super involved with a cappella and student theater on campus. And again, not once did I ever feel weird about being involved with those things, because like this whole brain engineering curriculum really does promote that, and the whole campus promotes that dipping your toes into all different things. So interdisciplinary education is so encouraged, promoted. I would highly recommend it. There are definitely classes that like weren't in engineering that are on my top 10 list. I love all my engineering classes, but I would definitely not trade all those experiences I had outside of engineering. So super, super easy, and I would highly recommend it.
That's so fun to hear. Very similar to that question. Megs, could you talk a little bit about if or how engineering students can manage clubs, activities, or other passion projects they might have outside of engineering?
Yeah, definitely. I know that's definitely a big thing on everyone's minds when they come into their first year at college. Like, how do I balance making sure that I am able to do everything that I want, and then also be able to like do well in my classes and devote the time that I need to my classes. And honestly, my biggest tip to everyone is just to like be on top of all of everything that's really going on, and just be aware of the opportunities around you so that you can capitalize on things in like a timely fashion. I personally have been able to do my BSMS, my degrees, my Kellogg Managerial Analytics certificate, and be involved in a lot of clubs. And while it seems like a big time commitment, it's definitely very doable. You really, like Sanath, I think, was saying, is it's not a competitive environment at all. Northwestern engineering is very collaborative. I've found that I'm able to work with other people to do my homeworks and problem sets and study with people, which definitely means that I'm spending less time than I would need to if I'm doing it all by myself. That collaborative environment really helps you to get your classes done like efficiently, and then also just to learn about more opportunities. And yeah, it's definitely very doable. The classes are rigorous, but definitely very fair. So all the clubs that you want to get involved in, the social life that you want to have in college is definitely very doable as an engineer.
That's amazing to hear. And I can echo that by saying almost every club I was in as an undergraduate definitely had at least an engineer or two involved. They're definitely not just stuck in our technological institute all the time. So I have been getting some program specific questions, but first I want to take a little interlude and ask some fun questions. So Olivia, what is something that not a lot of people know about Northwestern's engineering program?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, to me, I know it's been echoed a lot today, but I think the collaborative nature of the engineering program is something that I would really emphasize. It's the thing that made me most nervous going into Northwestern, especially being, one of the more competitive schools in an already pretty competitive university. I think that, to me, that's one of the most underrated things that people don't realize about McCormick.
I think that's a lovely answer. John, how have McCormick's core values impacted you and your studies while at Northwestern?
Also a good question. I'm going to answer it in a similar way, and it'll take a second to get there, so bear with me. One thing that I always say about Northwestern is it really is all about the combinations you can make here. So we learned about whole brain engineering, which is like kind of like combining traditional engineering education with like the liberal arts and sciences and stuff like that. And we've heard about DTC and collaborative classes and like these organizations you can do outside of class. And I think that's a McCormick thing, but also a Northwestern thing in general, is these really incredible combinations and collaborations you can make here. So whether that's going to Big Ten football games or launching rockets into space, like you name it, there's all this really cool infrastructure built around these core principles that, at least in my experience, have driven me into doing research where I combine chemical engineering with computer science. I was using Python to run data analysis on chemical engineering data this last spring while I was doing remote research. So it's all about these kind of ways that the core values of McCormick have allowed this infrastructure of connectivity and collaborative work to really result in a really awesome education.
That's wonderful to hear. I want to switch gears a little bit again and get into some program-specific questions. We have a really great variety of studies here within McCormick. First, I want to ask Sanath if you could explain the difference between computer science in Weinberg and computer science in McCormick a little bit.
Yeah, sure. This is a question I get a lot. So the core of the computer science major within Weinberg and McCormick are exactly the same. So the core classes that I need to take to graduate are exactly the same classes that my friends in Weinberg that are also in computer science need to graduate. What's different is sort of what goes around it, right? So like the McCormick requirements that I was speaking about a little bit earlier, like the engineering first curriculum, the basic sciences, the theme, electives, those are requirements that I need to graduate with a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science from McCormick. But my friends in Weinberg, on the other hand, have to do the distribution requirements that you can find on the Weinberg website, which go into it in a little bit more depth, but they have to take classes. They would have those requirements instead, like their formal studies and things like that, which I don't have. So it's sort of like just like what's around it in the context of your degree is a little bit different. And that's the main difference. The reason why I chose to do a Bachelor of Science in McCormick rather than Weinberg is because I was sort of going into my first year at Northwestern. I knew I was all about sort of like working in the shop. The engineering first curriculum really appealed to me. That's just something I wanted, and that's why I went for it with McCormick. But if you really want to have that liberal arts sort of background that and have the distribution requirements look good to you, totally go for the Weinberg degree. The core computer science thing, exactly the same.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I know that is a question we get a ton, so thank you for that great answer. Now, to move on to another question that we get a lot about our McCormick program, specifically, Olivia, BME. I have a two-part question for you. How much do the BME and PreMed curriculum overlap at Northwestern? And the second part is, can you balance your time as a BME on the PreMed track with doing things outside of the classroom? Because it seems like a heavy load.
Yeah, that's a great question. So kind of the reason why I decided to pick biomedical engineering is because it does overlap the most in terms of those classes between the engineering curriculum and your pre-med requirements. So I don't know if everyone's familiar, but I'll kind of go over what the pre-med requirements look like. So it's not a major that you get. It's not, you're not like graduating with a certificate for that. It's just a set of classes that most of the medical schools require you to have taken during your college experience in order to apply. So most of those will overlap with the biomedical engineering curriculum, but there are definitely additional ones in terms of more basic sciences that you will need. For example, for the typical BME curriculum, you only need 1/4 of organic chemistry, but unfortunately, being pre-med, I had to take the entire year-long sequence. But I think definitely it's doable. I also know some of my other friends who are in McCormick who are not BME who also are pre-med. So one of my friends is doing material science and engineering, and he is also able to do the pre-med requirements. So like I think John was saying about the quarter system, it really does allow you that flexibility to be able to integrate those classes into your time at Northwestern and definitely having time for other things as well. The fact that I'm doing a double major as well as being on the pre-med track, I don't think honestly I could do that at a semester school just because of the amount of courses, but the flexibility of the quarter system is really great for that. And I think honestly, I feel like most Northwestern students are doing so much in terms of what they're studying as well as outside of the classroom. And that's something that was really important to me when I was deciding whether or not to pursue both this major and the pre-med requirements. So definitely something that is very doable, especially if you plan your time wisely.
That's so good to hear. Thank you, Olivia. I want to ask the women on this panel, Olivia, because you just answered, I'll let you go last on this one. But if you guys could talk a little bit about your experience being women in STEM and specifically women in engineering at Northwestern. Megs, do you want to start and then send it over to Tricia when you're done?
Yeah, definitely. I have had an absolutely amazing experience in McCormick. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Specifically being a woman in engineering, I've never felt in any of my classes that I was treated differently by my peers or by my professors for being a woman. Definitely a very, just in general in McCormick, a high level of respect in classes for what people are doing. But there are a lot of really great resources for women in engineering. I would say definitely there is a larger percentage of men in my classes than women, but I know that McCormick is taking strides to improve that. And I know that our percentage of women in engineering is higher than the national number. Hopefully maybe someone else remembers the actual statistics, but I don't know them off the top of my head. But I'm a member of the Society of Women Engineers and Women in Computing, and those have given me really great opportunities to just network with other women in a similar field that I'm studying, and then also great for getting job opportunities, a lot of resume workshops, things like that, and a lot of giving back to the community to encourage women to engage in engineering. So I guess I'll hand it off to Tricia.
For sure. So like Megs, I've only had positive experiences. I got involved with SWE, Society of Women Engineering, early on as well. And they are really great with pairing you up with a mentor, and they try to do it as much as possible, like within your major. And that immediately was such a great connection to have, because this was someone that just helped me with navigating and everything. And if I ever had concerns, which I rarely ever did, that was someone that I knew I could always confide in. So a lot of really great resources there. And they also do a great job, like Megs touched on, with connecting you with like other women in the industry who have made strides in specific fields, which I think is wonderful. As far as something different to talk about, my advisor is a female professor in the Civil Environmental Engineering department. And she has like made it known that she is a resource. She was like, I know that there's sometimes not a lot of female professors and not as many female professors in this field as you would like. But just know that I'm here if you ever have any problems whatsoever, if you ever want to talk about any difficulties you have. So although I've never really had to use them because I've never had any like real difficulties, like substantial difficulties, it's always nice to know that there's resource upon resource if that ever were to come up. So I will pass it over to Olivia now.
Yeah, I would definitely echo everything that's been said. I don't know if I have anything too much to add, but I would definitely say, like, especially in the BME department, I think it's actually majority females. And again, echoing, I don't think I've ever really kind of been in a situation where I felt like I was less than because I was female. And I definitely agree with Tricia. I think being able to have professors that are female and really seeing them as role models throughout your educational experience has also been really amazing in terms of that.
Thank you so much, Olivia. We have just a few more questions before we have to end our time. So John, this is a fun one for you. What features of engineering buildings or labs are your favorite?
This is a weird one, and I'm probably unique in answering this. Our Technological Institute, for reference, is a really, really huge building. Supposedly it's the second largest low-lying building, like 4 stories or less in the United States behind the Pentagon. Lots of people, especially non-engineers, think it's super complicated to navigate and kind of a maze. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's really well laid out. The wings kind of go in alphabetical order around, and then the numbers are the floors. I think it's nice because I always know where I'm going. And most of my classes, for better or worse, are in that building. Yeah, and then labs specifically, they're all kind of congregated in similar areas. So in tech, at least, the first floor or main floor is predominantly classroom spaces. If you go downstairs or upstairs, you get into more and more lab spaces, and you kind of can tell by thinning concentrations of people. You'll see people in lab gear, lab equipment walking around. So I think that everything is kind of laid out intentionally, which really speaks to kind of the design focus of Northwestern engineering that you can see in DTC from the start. I might be unique in that I think tech's a cool building.
I think that was a great answer. And Olivia, could you talk very briefly about the first year experience and specifically advising for first year engineering students, and if you have any quick advice for first year?
Yeah, so honestly, I really love the advising system at Northwestern. I think it creates so much support right away. So I mentioned before, but I'm a peer advisor. So I help to guide our students through Wildcat Welcome, which is our 1-week orientation. So during Wildcat Welcome, you meet with your first year advisor, and these are 4 faculty members that are just dedicated to advising first year students during their first year at Northwestern. After your first year, once you have kind of decided what major you're going to pursue, then you will get an advisor in that department. So they will be able to answer more specific questions related to your major. And also, in addition to your major advisor, you get an advisor for any kind of track or double major or minor that you add on during your time at Northwestern. So I also have a psychology advisor and a pre-med advisor. And I think the advising system is really amazing. We've talked a lot about students, having a lot of diverse interests in terms of what they're studying. And I think the advising system really makes that possible in terms of helping you plan out your classes. And in terms of advice that I have for first year students, I would definitely say to take advantage of all the resources around you. I think there are so many, especially in such an amazing university. And I think college is a little bit different in high school in that, you won't always have teachers checking in on you, making sure you're doing your work or you're understanding different topics. But I think it's really important to be able to, take advantage of the people that are around you, whether that be professors or classmates that we've talked about, and just kind of, delve into what there is on campus.
Thank you so much. That brings us very nicely to our final question of the evening. So we're going to go around and say, why Northwestern engineering? And Tricia, can you start us off?
I would love to. So I always had the impression coming into college that you were in college for 4 years with your nose in a book, and then you went out and you got a job, and then you did real work with what you learned from that textbook. And like I said, I heard about this design thinking communication course on my tour of Northwestern, and I was like, whoa, I am walking in and I know nothing about engineering, and they're going to let me help someone do a real thing. And engineering is so tangible in the way that you will work to come up with a real solution. And I loved that it was right off the bat, and that set me up to actually understand what it was like to be an engineer and the impact that I could have as an engineer. And those kind of things you can't learn in a textbook. So the fact that Northwestern integrates that, and that's not just true for engineering. There's the practicum in SESB, and there's the JR and the Medill School of Journalism. But for McCormick specifically, the way that they integrated that within it, it sets you up for a really great transition to your career. And also, I just love how molded together they are. It was great to start off with right off the bat. With that, I'll pass it over to John.
Thanks, Tricia. I also, similarly to Tricia, come from a Chicago area suburb, so Northwestern is kind of close to home. For me, back to my running theme of combinations, it allows me to go home and do my laundry if I want, or ignore my family and stay in Evanston and not talk to them if I'm mad for whatever reason. I'm not mad, I love my family. But basically, Northwestern to me is all about the combinations and all about the people. My parents went to a school where college athletics was a huge thing, so I was raised on college basketball. Northwestern has Big Ten sports. Students get free admission to every single sporting event. We went to the Big Ten Championship for football 2 years ago, and they bussed down 4,600 students using all the Greyhound buses in the Chicagoland area to Indianapolis to watch the game. It was incredible. But at the same school, I'm able to be involved in a research lab, work in TEDx Northwestern, do research, or be a chemical engineering student. It's all this really cool stuff, and at the same time, you're with the best people in the world. Tricia and Megs and Sanath, I know all of you guys from before this. You're all great friends of mine. And everyone at Northwestern is super impressive. It's just everyone's doing this and that, and they want to figure out how to combine it together. So originally for me, Northwestern was like cool school, close to home, big sports, good engineering. But now my real reason why I'll always be in Wildcat is because of the people and all the friends that I've made. Sanath, you want to go?
Yeah, of course. I think the original reason, when I was applying to college and why I chose Northwestern was because I was all about the engineering and all about just like the technical side of that. But kind of how I alluded to earlier, the theme and like the electives that I could take in other departments was really something that was important to me. And like taking those classes has been amazing and has been like a great part of my Northwestern experience. But what's really cool about Northwestern, what John was sort of talking about earlier with the people, there's other people too that are doing like the same sort of stuff that have like crazy combinations. Like I can talk about like just like the intricacies of soldering with my friend, and then she'll just like dive into a political science spiel. That's like something that like doesn't really happen at a lot of places. And just like I have friends that combine just like crazy things like physics and viola performance, and I can go and like see him perform at one of our beautiful concert halls on the weekend. And it's just like just like some of those like the cool people that you meet at this school. And that's just like something that's like hard to picture when you're in high school and think about where you want to go to college. But that both those things that I mentioned were really big parts of why I love Northwestern. But the second people thing is like really what's key for me and something that was hard for me to see in high school. Megs, do you want to take it off?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I would echo a lot of what's been said before. How I like to phrase my like why Northwestern is I like wanted to go to like the Goldilocks of schools. I didn't want to go to a school that was too big where I just wouldn't know the people. And I didn't want to go to a school that was too small where I felt like I knew everyone after my first year. And Northwestern has really given me like a great balance of, I feel like I know the people here so well, but I also am meeting new people every day that, like everyone was saying earlier, are so interesting. They have such different passions and interests that they really are passionate about and want to talk to you about and like teach you about and then listen to yours. For my like why McCormick, I really love the problem solving mind space that everyone in McCormick really is in. Like everyone here really wants to solve these big world problems. Maybe it's on a small scale, maybe it's on a large scale. People here are really interested in how the world works, why it works, and it's really a positive and collaborative space, and I've enjoyed every minute that I've spent in it. Olivia, want to finish us off?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, my why McCormick comes down to the professors. I was really afraid coming to college. I had really developed these relationships with my high school teachers and wasn't sure if it would be the same in college. I thought there was going to be this kind of invisible divide between the students and the professors, and that they were just there to do their research. But I found that to be completely opposite of what I've experienced in McCormick. I had a BME professor come around on the first day of class and ask the TAs to take pictures of all the students, like holding up a note card with their name. And the next day he knew all of our names. And I think that's really the kind of personalized experience that you get in McCormick, is that the professors are really there for you and they want to help you learn and grow as both students and people. So I think for me, the professors are really special. And with that, I'll give it back to Simone.
Thank you all so much for your wonderful why Northwestern and for all of your help this evening on this panel. And to everyone watching, thank you for spending part of your Thursday with us. If you have any other Northwestern questions, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. And look, we have a bunch of info sessions, student panels, and other school-specific information panels on this. You can also find us on Instagram and Snapchat and Facebook at Northwestern Admissions. Have a great evening and go Cats!